Joe's much faster.
Okay.
All right.
Well, yeah, because his is the greatest delay.
Okay, so here we go once again. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this summer episode again of Talking TWAMPs. I am William Moore, your host once again. We shall be... how should we do the order of introductions this time? I need something clever and can't come up with it. Well, we'll just go around the triangle on my screen here, starting with Jacob.
My name is Jacob Cordis, still recording from the backwater hamlet of Yorktown, Virginia, birthplace of our nation, and I am just so happy to be here, folks.
Blake.
I'm Blake Phillips. I'm still recording from the control center of our nation, which I can attest to is on fire and in disarray.
And
is this War of
Joe.
1812?
I am Joe. I am recording from the control center of a nation. And it's actually doing pretty well. Few people know it, but President Missouri's reforms are very well received.
Good to hear.
Go. good to know. And I am William Moore in the control nation, and definitely in the control center of the control nation of the U.S., having returned from a different nation that is on fire in a different way. And yeah, let's get right into this topic, which is there is no topic. We're just going to talk about all the random crap that has happened as of late, and there is a lot of it, ranging from the North Korea summit to EU sanctions to freaking what else? Just everything.
AKA Hot Takes Edition.
Yes, Hot Takes Edition, Italian elections, spying. It's all very, very... And Spain. Jacob really wants to start with Spain, so we're going to start with Spain.
Yeah, so at least we can get it out of the way.
Yeah. Well, a bit of background of what happened in Spain. The PM of Spain, how do you say his name?
Mariano Rajoy.
Rajoy? Okay,
Mariano
Rajoy. Prime Minister Rajoy has lost a vote of no confidence, and the leader of the opposition has now become Prime Minister of Spain.
Pedro Sanchez.
Yep. Rajoy is famous, was kind of made world fame or infamous, depending upon your perspective, because he was the PM who clamped down on the whole Catalonian secession thing.
I'm glad you mentioned that, William, because that brings me to my hot take.
No.
My hot
William,
take
what have you
is
done?
Carles Puigdemont, the former First Minister of Catalonia, I see a one-way ticket back to Barcelona in his near future, and I think we're going to see, if not independence for Catalonia, because again, pipe dream, I think we're at least going to see some real negotiation and perhaps another bout of increased autonomy.
That is a hot take. Blake, your opinions on that? Because you clearly...
I think it is so irrelevant.
Wow, okay.
I think that this man will say just about anything to keep in good graces for longer than his predecessor, because his predecessor tanked. And as long as the economic situation in Spain continues to suffer, this man will also tank.
Whoa. Who said the economic situation in Spain is suffering? That's not why Mariano Rajoy got kicked out.
I think it underlies a lot of the problems that ended up getting him kicked out.
No. Spain is doing better economically than many of the other nations in southern Italy. It's doing better than Italy. It's doing better than Greece, which, to be fair, not great comparisons,
Yeah, great
right?
baselines. Yeah.
It's doing better than Poland, though. So, that's actually a pretty good... And anyway, the point is Mariano Rajoy was removed from office because of an enormous corruption scandal. And I think that... And you think that's tied to unemployment or something?
No. I just think that people tend not to care as much when, and you don't tend to get the same populist leaders who end up perpetrating most of these corruption scams without massive unemployment waves. But I think regardless, looking forward, the issue is going to be, can Spain, make good on some of the promises it's made to the EU to sort of not be the worst child in the room, and hold itself together.
I know
at least.
You guys don't pay attention to European politics, but Spain has already done that. Now, Catalonia was a hitch in the road, but
it's not a lot of its growth is on very unstable markets, but I will contend that yes, it is not as bad as others. Sure.
Like Portugal, nation of fishermen.
I mean, I've always long held that Portugal should be subsumed into its rightfully geographic Iberian superstate, but that's just me.
Okay, I guess there are no more hot takes on Spain. I just wanted to get my 2 cents in.
Just wanted to get the 2 cents in. Well, switching to another southern European nation that's been having some hot moments, how about Italy? The Italians recently held, well, I say recently, in the past few months held their general elections for their parliament. Overwhelmingly, populist won. I'm forgetting the name of the secondary one, but one of them was the five-star.
Populist, let's call them what they are. They're right-wingers.
They are right-wingers. Their policies do stem a lot of deportation of illegal migrants. Setting pretty flat taxes was the other big thing that I remember. I was recently in Italy, and I talked with some people about this, and that was the impression that I was getting from them, was those were the two big things that the new government, they expected to focus on. The interesting thing, politically speaking, is that the president of Italy, whose name I'm totally forgetting, decided that he didn't like the government that was assembled by the parliament. And as president of Italy, he actually has the ability to veto the government. His name is Sergio Mattarella, if you wanted to know. But he vetoed the government because he particularly did not like the finance minister that they put up, who was a EU skeptic. Thoughts on that? Because it's just interesting that the president vetoed this government.
I have 2 quick, very hot takes. The first is I watched the stock market tank when he announced this and could not understand why. The Italian economy has never been large enough to really massively affect even the EU economy, let alone the world economy. And second, since when has Italy not had a reputation for electing inflammatory governments headed by random businessmen or weird populists? It's a different kind of populism. It belongs to this new sort of right-wing wave. I have never leaned on the stability of the Italian government for anything.
As well, you should not. It's a rare thing when a government makes Spain look stable and sane by comparison.
Exactly.
Well, the Italians are hot-blooded people. They've had pretty much as many governments as they've had years since the establishment of the Republic.
And just as many presidents and prime ministers who have been media moguls, property moguls, adulterous, just rich people for no reason.
Jacuzzi orgy having tabloid owners.
Exactly. I literally have never once looked at the Italians and gone, yes, let's emulate that. So, as weird as it is that like this belongs to a greater wave, it's really not that concerning.
Yeah, I mean, it is true. Let's talk a little bit, though, because I did find this fascinating while I was in there. Paolo Savona was the finance minister who was the reason that the new government was not approved. And his whole thing was being a Euro skeptic, specifically of the Euro as a currency. Not like he is skeptic of the European Union as well, but the Euro as a currency. Thoughts on that? His opinions were very much that it was actually the euro was the thing that was destroying the Italian economy, because because the lack of Italian governmental control over the production of the euro was stifling growth.
Not the first Southeastern European government minister to claim that. Not the first one to be evicted from office after the IMF came knocking.
Hey, he never was. He was never in office. Let's keep that in mind.
Right, but like. We can Scaramucci this guy. He was in office, but he wasn't,
He was the government's pick. I just want to know why he thinks an Italian lira, reviving that old dinosaur, is going to do really anything for Italy's economic prospects.
Why? Because he's got no experience and he's been raised on right-wing BS. That's why.
Well, let's be charitable, shall we? There is a solid economic argument to be made that poor European countries are not doing as well as they could have because of the relative strength of the euro. Is there not a solid economic argument to be made about that?
There is an isolation, but it is more than outweighed by the ridiculous amount of subsidies that those governments receive, which they could be investing properly if they had
I guess the idea on the Italian end is that they would drop the euro but not drop the subsidies, which of course wouldn't happen.
Which you can't do.
Yeah. But also, I think the relative strength of the euro really only has a gigantic effect if you're talking about countries that have tariffs up in between them. But last time I checked, the European Union is a free trade zone, so there's really nothing there, I think, economically.
And for the record, he does have a little bit of experience with economics. Not in government policy, but he is a university professor of economics, so he does study.
Because I also would love to study at an Italian university.
Hey!
They have great art programs.
Yes, okay, fair enough. If I was studying art, I would book it to Italy.
True enough. Okay.
But more relevantly, America has its fair share of crazy economic professors that don't have anything, that don't know what they're saying. There's one at Stanford right now that they're thinking of firing because he did opposition research against a bunch of his students to try and get them expelled. So no. Just because he's a professor at what I'm sure is a very reputable Italian university does not mean that he is qualified to run an entire government's economic department.
Well, he's just doing a little bit of background here. He served previously as the Minister of Industry, Commerce, and Craftsmanship. Jeez, I didn't know
okay. So basket weaving, man.
Well, he's also done a few other things. He was a member of the OECD and the BIS Standing Committee.
Okay, we're not here to discuss this guy's resume. Next hot take.
Okay, next hot take. Sticking to the topic of economics, U.S. Sanctions on the European Union and Canada and Mexico and other place that I'm forgetting. I guess
the
just
European
thoughts.
Union?
He said
idea.
China?
Oh, okay.
I guess China to a lesser extent. Let's go with that. Because China was a while ago.
It takes a crazy idea to make me agree with the Koch brothers.
Oh, hot take.
Well, because even they have decided that they're going to run a several $100 million ad campaign against these tariffs, because they're just that dumb.
Well, the EU has stated that these tariffs are a dangerous game, and the EU has raised retaliatory tariffs against the United States. Are we in the opening shots of a tariff war, or do we think this isn't going to escalate too much?
No. Trump's not going to be in office long enough to make this a tariff war, and the level heads in the EU will match him blow for blow until somebody else takes office and reverses the whole thing, which they'll reciprocate immediately.
I've got a little bit of a hot take here. I think that Trump is more than capable of turning this into a trade war. I think he's surprised us before. He can surprise us again. At the very least, he can do lasting damage to our steel industry and everything that relies on it. Even if he just pops up, another 5-10%, that's enormous economic damage. I think this could have permanent ramifications.
Nah. At some point, even the people who are theoretically benefiting short term from this are going to go to him and be like, stop. He will listen to the people with a bunch of money in their pockets because he's ultimately a greedy person. And even the promise, even the smell of money is worth more to him than his word. So there's no way.
No way whatsoever, huh?
This is gonna
Blake,
hurt.
you're too optimistic.
This is gonna hurt our credibility, to be sure. It's gonna hurt American workers for as long as they're in place, and it's gonna hurt smaller American businesses in the very long term. Our larger American businesses are going to be fine, and we're going to have to go back to the EU hat in hand. We're probably going to have to give them a couple of concessions to re-earn their trust.
Well, I want to stop talking about the EU because they're not that important. I want to talk about Canada. I mean, they're the largest trading partner for the vast majority of U.S. states, and we just slapped tariffs on them like it was nothing. I mean, just the amount of trust that we're burning on the world stage right now is incredible.
And we're going to have to go back to all of our trade partners again, hat in hand, with a couple of concessions to be like, we're terribly sorry that we ever elected this man. But ultimately, Canada has no choice in the matter, because not only are they dependent on us for trade as much as we're dependent on them, it's something ridiculous like 2/3 of their businesses are owned by U.S. corporations. So it's literally just Trump saying, in order for ex-U.S. business to import goods into the U.S., they have to pay a tariff. And that's going to affect Canada's tax levels to a certain extent. And it really, because of the nature of globalized business, all this is doing is hitting certain U.S. companies at the benefit of other U.S. companies. And funnily enough, in certain instances, it's actually just hurting certain factories owned by U.S. companies at the benefit of other factories owned by the exact same U.S. companies.
Well, I mean, you think about car manufacturers in Mexico versus car manufacturers in the U.S. I guess that's true. Although Trump might see that as a bonus. You know, if it benefits domestic factories versus foreign factories, that's part of his platform.
Right, which I think is technically what he's doing. But the other thing is that unless he holds on to office for the next 12 years, I shudder. There's no way that he can reverse something that's taken companies almost 20 years to do, which is export that number of factories to other countries.
I smell a constitutional amendment in the air.
Yeah, don't. But I'm just saying that there's no way. That's one of the few benefits of trade policy when it comes to the short term that presidents can hold office. Because ultimately it would be nice if we had, somebody who was able to stably say for the next 30 years I'll be controlling trade policy. But I'm not advocating for a constitutional amendment. I want to make that clear. But what I'm saying is one of the marginal benefits is that if we do get a president like Trump who's doing really crazy stuff, the world economy just has to reel for a couple of years, and then we can come back and be like, we're so terribly sorry.
I mean, fair enough. Joe, any thoughts on this economics?
I want to be optimistic, but I think that there's a huge amount of damage that can be done in the short term, and I find it difficult to believe that things are going to be able to just go back to normal even once Trump is out. That's all
an interesting economic tidbit that I'd like to throw in that has nothing to do with these topics, but I think is an interesting take and an interesting opportunity that this country is inevitably going to pass up.
What temperature is this take?
Decently hot, actually. Jordan is really, really mad at us right now because of the embassy shift in Israel. But Saudi Arabia and the UAE just cut off all backing for Jordanian money. And Jordan is seeing protests as the highest that they've been since the Arab Spring because of a sudden economic decline. We are in a prime position to step in right now and bankroll a whole bunch of IMF loans to Jordan and shore up a long-term strategic ally in the Middle East. It's just it's an interesting opportunity that I think we're going to pass entirely, but I think it would be really neat if we could pick up.
Well, yeah, I was about to say, if it's a good idea, you can bet the Trump administration isn't going to look twice at it. Should we talk about the embassy move to Jerusalem?
I guess we can talk about that. That's a pretty old take, but the embassy move to Jerusalem was...
I'm not even going to say much about this. Just stupid.
bad.
was basically the president decided to not renew a 6-month delay on a congressional action. So I forget when the congressional action occurred. I think it was in the 80s.
It was like 2000. Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yeah. Basically, Congress said we're going to move our embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and U.S. presidents were like, maybe not. And then Trump was like,
Rightfully
maybe okay.
Well, because all Congress could have legally passed is not actually, we're going to move this embassy. All Congress at that point could have actually ratified is the funding to move the embassy. It's ultimately the executive branch's call.
I mean, that's true. Yeah, I don't know if there's who suggested this. What did you want to talk, Jacob? Was it you?
I know. I just wanted to say how bad of an idea it was. I don't really.
Yeah,
have any
I think it's
takes
just.
on it.
I think we all get to just say that it was very, very dumb.
Well, it's certainly enraging our Middle Eastern allies.
It's enraging everybody, and it's only helping Israel. It's only helping our relationship with Israel, which wasn't really that bad to begin with. I mean, where else were they going to go for help?
Very true. Who else is going to bankroll their fancy schmancy air defense systems?
It's not as if Putin was going to go, yes, I will bankroll both Iran and Israel.
Hey, now it's not that far out there. The Soviet Union bankrolled Israel for the first half of the 21st century.
Yeah, but I mean, so did we. It was kind of one of those things.
Century?
The 20th century, sorry.
Little did you realize the Soviet Union still exists.
Yes.
It's out there and it's still rising. And
Well,
it's
you know, if you listen to Putin...
Well, no, it's like that, what was it? Oh, damn, that one scene in The Simpsons where they were like, we had you fooled. It was like the Russian ambassador at the end.
yeah.
Hits a button. The Berlin Wall shoots back up, things of that nature. One other thing relating to Russia to a lesser extent and its nuclear pet dog that it can't keep under control. North Korea, the summit that's coming up. Thoughts?
No.
No.
It's like watching
I just can't see what... I don't see what it will accomplish because... we don't know anything about really what Kim Jong-un is really like, but I think it's fair to say that Trump is not a diplomat at heart. I assume that all of the real work that gets done here, it will be sort of done by lower level people. I'm not sure that there's anything we can say about it at the moment.
And even then, even if the lower level people strike a deal, I think that with the Iran nuclear deal, we've seen that Trump won't sign deals unless total denuclearization is in the language, which North Korea vehemently will never agree to. I think ultimately we're just going to watch another flop like we watch every 20 years trying to negotiate with North Korea.
Well, it is interesting. Do we think that but why is North Korea coming to the table if it's realistically not going to give up anything?
They want concessions for blowing up that mountain. I mean, which, to be fair, I guess they should get concessions for it or whatever. It'll help normalize relations for what that's worth.
I also just think that they hit where they needed to be nuclearly, and they decided, forget it. Now that we're where we want to be, let's see what they'll give us. Now that we know that we have the nuclear option, let's see what they'll negotiate on. Because before, when they came to the table, they always came to the table at a place of weakness. But now that they have this stick, I think they may just be sort of testing us. Just sort of, what will they offer us?
Well, I also saw an interesting article that said there was a bit of a translation error in all of the kind of U.S.-North Korea discussions about denuclearization, and it's one that South Korea does understand, which is that when North Korea discusses denuclearization, they're discussing something along the lines of dismantling test facilities, but keeping the weapons themselves for a period. Whereas when we discuss denuclearization, at least in the popular, discourse, it's generally as immediate dismantling of all weapons. And so I think that might be a good perspective on why these negotiations keep failing. We're starting from different points.
Yeah, that's a fair point. That's a good take.
I mean, that's a pretty big translation error, though.
Not a translation error in the literal sense of
but like a societal. it's like a cultural
misunderstanding
understanding
between the two parties. You know.
Yeah.
Very, very fair. I mean, very fair. I guess that is a different position. I personally, this is something that I've been thinking on. I don't even understand why North Korea's coming to the table. I mean, they're not going to give up anything.
And that's why I don't like discussing it, because there's nothing. We have no data on this. The last time North Korea came to the discussion table, they wanted oil, and that was basically all they wanted. They wanted regular shipments of oil. And now they're not even saying that necessarily. And so we have absolutely no idea where he could even potentially be coming from. There are so many different sources. I'm just waiting till the 12th to see if they pull this off, if anybody meets, and what they say when they do.
Fair enough.
Pretty much.
Fair enough. Okay. I guess, we have time for one more. Also relating to the 12th here in Virginia is primary season for the midterm elections and, in my case, local elections. Thoughts on 2018 primaries and, I guess, 2018 elections in general, because they're coming up pretty soon.
I don't think that the primaries themselves are super important in districts where we don't see one of two things. The first is either really random legislative systems, so like California, where they have just top two take runoff positions, top two primaries basically, where you can feasibly have no candidate from one party. You can have two candidates from the same party running against each other. Those primaries are going to be interesting to watch.
Okay,
and then other...
Okay. Oh, no, go ahead.
I'll be quick. The only other one is where we see a fully endorsed Bernie-crat running against a fully endorsed entrenched Democrat, like traditionalist.
Damn it, Blake! You pulled it right out from under my feet.
And just seeing, I'm not even taking a side on what it'll mean for one of either of those two to win, but just seeing which districts decide to go one way and which districts decide to go the other, because it'll be an interesting way to sort of paint the map of which districts are left and therefore, we can fairly say probably young, and then which ones are left but not as left.
Guys, here's how Bernie can still win, all right?
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, stop.
The California primary is going to be incredibly interesting. As Blake mentioned, often in a lot of California districts, you do end up with two Democrats running against each other. And typically, the establishment Democrat wins. Whoever won the Democratic primary tends to win, the runoff race.
Which makes a ton of sense.
There aren't usually many surprises there. This year, though, the blue wave, I think we've mentioned it on previous episodes, there is a theory going around, and I think it has some weight behind it, that the blue wave is not just going to lift Democratic prospects nationally, but also lift the prospects of further left candidates in places like California. And that's going to be incredibly important because it means that if California swings further left, it's going to have
even further left.
Even further left, right. To the Bernie wing, right?
Yeah.
We're going to see an effect in 2020 because the outcomes of the midterm this time around are going to have a pretty big effect on the California primary, for the California Democratic primary in 2020.
Which they moved forward to March recently, which was a terrible decision, by the way.
Yeah, awful.
Well, I mean, at this point, we're going to be voting in presidential primaries, September, the year after the midterms. But
Well, the point is, this was done by California. I assert, this is my conspiracy theory, as basically a way to get Kamala Harris in. Because the thing is, the point of having these small states as early primaries is it allows lesser-known, lesser-funded candidates to have a chance to build a national profile. You have a giant media market like California go that early in the primary cycle. That's an enormous benefit to those politicians who are already well-known in California.
Joe's watching Sherrod Brown's hopes slip through his fingers. He's dying on the inside.
I don't know how he'd do in California.
Well, I think he'll do pretty well in Iowa.
I don't know. Weren't the Muppets produced out there?
That's not funny, guys.
I feel like he's got some
Actually,
pull.
it's a little bit funny, but, you know.
I don't know. I think it's pretty funny.
I think of the picture you posted, William, Bernie looks much more like a Muppet than Sherrod.
No, I'm telling you, it needs to be a new political
Martin O'Malley
party.
2020.
We're gonna see the Muppet Party 2020.
The Muppet wing of the Democratic Party.
Little did you realize it's coming in hot. Alrighty, well, I guess that's our hot take of the major news. If we want to talk about more popular stuff, we could make the final statements on the royal wedding and why, in my opinion, we shouldn't give two craps about it. But that's
terrible event.
Terrible event.
Although it has produced some decent memes. We can let's do our last take on that, shall we?
On the memes of the royal wedding,
or just the royal wedding itself. I need to be able to talk about the memes.
It is humiliating that Americans care enough about the British royal wedding to make memes about it. It's an affront to our nation, I think.
That's a pretty hot take. I've got a take that's even hotter than that. Seize the monarchy. Seize their palaces. Seize their dogs, seize their carriages, seize it all, okay? And put them in a flat in Brighton or something.
It's time to socialize the corgis.
Yes, please. Those corgis don't deserve that. They don't deserve it.
I guess my hot take is we need to find out if we can... So... We need to find out some way to get Meghan Markle's brother, she's got to have one, on into the U.S. presidency, and then we need to start an assassination. I mean, the CIA is primed for this. We need to start an assassination campaign until she's the only one left, and then we'll do a dual inheritancy. I'm pretty sure the imperial title of England takes precedence over the Merchant Republic title of the U.S. We'll have a negative 15 modifier for all of the governors of opinion, but that's it.
See, Blake, you forgot one thing. You didn't get the matrilineal marriage.
Oh, shoot. Gosh darn it.
It's okay because if they have a daughter, the fact that there's family relations will make them more likely to accept a matrilineal marriage. So you just gotta wait another generation.
No. Let's just restart from the last autosave. It's better. We can see if he won't do the tariffs. Let's just do that.
Definitely. And yeah, it's people, honestly. Why do we give a crap about the royal wedding? That's my hot take, is why do we care? We fought a damn war. We fought 2 damn wars to not give a and yet for some reason we do 200 years later.
I don't know. I liked Suits. It was the only reason I paid attention.
You know, apparently the actual dress code for the royal wedding was you had to dress very formally and with a hat.
Very nice.
You had to have a hat.
Now, to have a hat. To be fair, if I was the ceremonial head of a nation state, I would make people wear hats too.
Well, yeah, because the head is only best complimented by a hat.
No, just as an exercise of power.
Gotcha.
Just to prove a point.
All right.
Alrighty. Well, thank you for listening for our Hot Takes episode. I think that's probably what's going to be entitled. Once again, we are an editorial podcast, so our hot takes about the Royals are our own. Obviously, the college, for pretty clear reasons, is kind of a fan of the monarchy, at least in its foundation.
If you enjoyed this episode of Talking TWAMPs, be sure to check out our other podcasts on our Spreaker site or wherever you get your podcasts by searching Podcasting Network at William and Mary. We've got a lot of great stuff, something for everyone, so be sure to check them out.
Yep. That's it, everybody. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Alrighty, I guess we can do a conclusion sync if everybody's still going.
I am.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, sync. Joe, I swear to God, did you not say anything again?
I'm sorry, I forgot. Go ahead. Go do it again.